And now, for our first informative speaker, code 4057 on some revolutionary.
If you're looking at me right now, you've probably noticed I look like I really like musical theater. And yet, despite everything about my appearance, I actually listen to rap music. Sorry, that's my bad. That's the wrong. That's right. I really put the gay in gangster. And from Lupe Fiasco to Kendrick Lamar, I have fallen in love with the ability of rap to teach kids how to cuss. And it wasn't long before I could finally relate to Drake, because I soon had a minor obsession with cussing as much as possible, which, surprisingly enough, didn't go over well with my local Bible Belt community, who thought I was suddenly cussing way too much. Partially because I was, but mostly because to them, any amount of cussing was way too much cussing. They were firm believers in the boring, non-profane words of George Washington, who once unfamously stated that the foolish and wicked practice of profane swearing and cursing is a vice so mean and low that any person of sense and character detests and despises it. Well, I don't think a man with donkey teeth should be teaching others how to keep their mouths clean. He does still highlight an undoubtedly interesting taboo that, unlike the Constitution he helped write, is still well respected by our leaders today. The belief that curse words are, fittingly, a curse on society. Even now, we continue to view vulgarity as harsh, unprofessional, and unintelligent. And cognitive psychology professor Dr. Timothy Jay explains that we have allowed this perception to govern the way that we speak and express ourselves, even though we don't actually know anything about these cuss words. So today, it's time that we finally lead a revolution against this very lack of knowledge. In a battle we'll split into two parts. We'll begin by first declaring independence from societal opinions on cuss words. We explore exactly what they are scientifically before second, crossing the line and diving into the Delaware to discover the chilling reason why cuss words have gotten such a bad rap. And don't worry, you're in good hands. Because according to my disciplinary record at Lindale High School, I am an expert in cuss words. Which isn't honestly that impressive, considering that, in a way, we're all secretly experts in cuss words. Don't believe me? Well then, you! Because I can prove it. But to do that, we're going to need to play a little game I like to call WTF, or What's That Phrase? The game where I show you 3 sets of 2 foreign words each, and you get to guess which word from each set is a cuss word and which one isn't. Your choices are yog or tsog, sola or sotsa, rakwa or bakta. Now, according to a 2024 audio-linguistic study conducted by actual experts, Dr. Shiri Lavari and Dr. Ryan McKay, there is roughly a 67% chance that you chose tsog, sotsa, and bakta. But you see, that chance wasn't just random. What these researchers discovered is that across all languages, cultures, and communities, cuss words all bear one similar linguistic trait. They all contain little to no approximates, which is just the gang title for the letters L, R, W, Y, and their brotherhood of sonorous sounds. You see, these approximates force their speaker to pass air between the lips and tongue, which in turn greatly reduces the emotional expression of a word. But cuss words don't have approximates, so they are therefore hyper-expressive. So much so that a series of neuroscientific studies conducted by researchers at Keele University has recently revealed that cuss words are literally stored in a different part of your brain, while most boring words are stored in the left side of your brain. In the visual word form area, or VWFA, if you gangster, curse words are actually stored in the fun right side of your brain, in the limbic system, the part of your brain where emotions are processed. And as a result, cussing gives us a sort of secret superpower, one that researchers Carly Hay and Jackson Sills discovered in their aptly titled 2024 study, F-Pain, which famously split its test group in half. See, Group A was allowed to cuss like middle schoolers discovering Deadpool, but Group B wasn't allowed to cuss at all. These volunteers were then asked to place their hand into a bucket of water, chilled by our president's favorite thing, ice. And the researchers measured how long each participant could keep their hand in the water without pulling it out. The result? Those who were allowed to cuss lasted or about 31 seconds longer than those who couldn't, as they benefited from a roughly 56% increase in pain tolerance. Because, they explain, when we cuss, we experience a feeling of catharsis, similar to what we'd feel if we painted a beautiful work of art, not only significantly reducing our physical pain, but also helping us to manage extreme negative emotions like rage, anxiety, and depression. See, in more ways than one, cussing literally makes us stronger. But now that I'm done regurgitating research studies, spitting bars, it's time that we finally come to terms with how society got to have so much beef with vulgarity. And Renaissance literature expert Dr. Melissa Moore explains in her infamous book, Holy, A Brief History of Swearing, that in the early stages of Latin, ruling elites began to normalize use of the phrase vulgaris, later shortened to just vulgar, and meaning from the common people. The phrase was used as a way to label the language of the poor and help distinguish the upper from the lower class. But as you well know, oppression makes even the wisest men mad. And this oppression sparked a long history of largely forgotten resistance that all began in the background of every incel's favorite conversation piece. Ancient Rome, where oppressed communities would graffiti profane words and images onto buildings as a way to physically defile their oppressors, which centuries later would inspire medieval serfs to begin using blasphemous phrases like fop doodle as a way to resist harsh religious norms, before finally Shakespeare revolutionized cursing into a form of critical satire that mocked this class distinction. Even right here in Virginia, during the American Revolution, curse words were literally decreed to be illegal. But that didn't stop local Virginian revolutionaries from using vulgar terms like jackanape as a way to express extreme outrage and political dissent, the very kind of political dissent that came to a head with movements like absurdism and Dadaism, which sought to officially claim vulgarity as art, and eventually created a vibrantly profane subculture of swearing that USC law professor Dr. Jody Armour describes as a powerful weapon of resistance for oppressed communities throughout history. But it was recent history, he explains, that these movements really and truly discovered their leaders, with the founding fathers of rap, who used vulgarity to connect with common, everyday people. Because Lupe Fiasco put it best, sometimes people won't listen until you cuss at them. And if cussing is like painting a beautiful work of art, well then rap music was curating an entire art gallery, one that used abrasive harshness to prove a point. After all, if their lives hurt, why shouldn't their words? They weren't being unintelligent. They were just being massively blunt. Unfortunately, as dope as the movement was, it began to unravel in the face of the Parents Music Resource Center a joint committee of concerned American women who viewed rap as a weed to be pulled from society. So in 1990, they threw their weight into the pot, establishing a voluntary labeling system that required a sticky, icky parental advisory sticker to be placed on any and all explicit content, leaving the entire rap world turned upside down. See, their goal was clear: protect society from the crude differentness, not of the words being said, but of the people saying them. You see, the revolution would never be televised because they wouldn't let it be. And while the PMRC may just have been blowing smoke, American studies expert Scott Stern explains that even today, we remain addicted to the censorship of the profane. But we forget that our lives hurt. And we use vulgarity to express our pain. So when we lose our vulgarity, we lose ourselves. Because the NSDA is right. Words matter. All of them. But in the haze of our addiction, we continue to label the words that we use for emotional expression: rage, resistance, and poverty as harsh, unprofessional, and unintelligent. Because to those selling us these ideas, the only truly bad word is different and moist. Nobody doesn't hate that word, not even the racists. See, throughout the course of history, cuss words have evolved from a mere lack of approximants into a battleground where expression revolts against censorship. And while the experts all say, hey, yeah, cuss words, great, awesome, our parents still say no. But in the end, cuss words serve as an ultimate reminder that maybe not everything is as it appears on the surface. Because maybe rap can be beautiful. And maybe I am not that fruity. And maybe cuss words really are on some revolutionary. But that's only when we get to hear them. Ladies and gentlemen, the revolution has just been televised. Thank you. Okay, do you want help?
And now, for our second informative speaker, code 4208, with their speech, It's Alive.
It was a dark and stormy night in 1797. Thunder shook the windows of Mary Wollstonecraft's London home as she went into labor. A radical writer and early champion of women's rights, she demanded that no male doctors touch her. Only midwives she trusted. But when complications arose, a male physician was summoned. He arrived with confidence, but without clean hands or sanitized tools. The moment he intervened, he unknowingly sealed her fate. 11 days later, Mary Wollstonecraft died of infection. And the child who was born that night in a thunderstorm and left by her mother too soon was Mary Shelley, who would go on to write Frankenstein, a Gothic warning about what happens when men play God with bodies they don't understand. So yeah, women's healthcare has basically been a horror story since the beginning. As Dr. Eleanor Claycorn writes in her 2023 book, Unwell Women, women's bodies have been treated like medical mysteries for centuries, with our symptoms often dismissed or misdiagnosed. That disconnect between women and the medical systems meant to treat them demands understanding, not just outrage. Instead of hunting for a monster, we're going to examine the forces that helped create one. First, how early medical systems were built around men and left women out. Second, how that disconnect still affects the way women are diagnosed and treated today. And third, the research and reforms that are beginning to stitch the system back together. Now, Frankenstein's monster didn't just show up one day. Some guy had to build it, ignore the instructions, and skip the sanitation step, which coincidentally is also how women's healthcare got its start. In ancient Greece, Hippocrates coined the phrase, wandering womb, the idea that the uterus could float around the body and cause chaos. Whoa, hey, keep it down in there. I'm trying to give a speech. Vertigo, weakness, sudden death. The wandering womb was their answer. Just another thing men can't seem to find. But when men weren't making medical fan fiction out of women's organs, they were calling them icky. Dr. Smitty Nathan explains in her 2024 work, The Archaeology of Menstruation, that men have been treating women like monsters during our time of the month for at least 4,000 years. Many cultures adopted seclusion rituals for menstruating women, isolating from the home, food, or even sunlight. And it's not just ancient history. In Nepal, the practice of chowpatty still forces menstruating women into isolation huts, where many have died from exposure, snake bites, or assault. But the problems with women's healthcare didn't just stem from bad biology. As the International Museum of Surgical Sciences reported on December 17, 2024, for centuries, women healers, herbalists, and midwives worked alongside men. Then universities, the church, and medical guilds showed up and decided healing should come with a degree, a fee, and preferably a goatee. So the women who had been keeping people alive and delivering babies for generations were recast as, you guessed it, witches. And when you burn actual experts on women's bodies at the stake, the results aren't good. And once women were pushed out, things only got darker. In the 1800s, Black women in the American South were used as life test subjects for medical innovation. Doctors like J. Marion Sims performed gynecological experiments on enslaved women like Betsy, without anesthesia and in front of an audience. Unfortunately, the scars of that exploitation run deep. Well, it's alive. Not Frankenstein's monster, but the ways in which women's health care is lumbering around today. Not staggering through villages, but wreaking havoc in data, diagnoses, and exam rooms. First, medical tools weren't built for us. Pacemakers for years were calibrated to specifications to male heart rates. Even joint replacements were inserted in women using wrong sizings. But if the doctor's office can't accommodate you, bring your own gear. That's right, Nellispec. A more comfortable implement for gynecological exams has been running TV advertisements encouraging women to bring their own medieval salad tongs for their pap smears. But when women aren't having missized medical equipment shoved where the sun don't shine, we're being dismissed. Take endometriosis, a condition that affects 1 in 10 women, causing chronic pain, fatigue, and even infertility. Yet it takes on average 7 to 10 years to get a diagnosis. The Washington Post of October 21st, 2024 explains that in emergency rooms, women wait on average 30 minutes longer than men. Women are 10% less likely to have our pain recorded in medical records, and women are 2 times less likely to be prescribed pain medication at all. And nowhere are the effects felt more clearly than in childbirth. Last month, ProPublica reported on Charisse Doily, a Florida woman who went into labor. Doctors began telling her that a C-section was necessary, despite there being only a 2% risk to herself and her unborn child. Doily, who had been a trained birthing doula, said that she did not want a C-section unless it became an emergency. But shortly thereafter, hospital staff brought in a tablet and connected her to a live courtroom. And under Florida's expanding fetal personhood laws, the male judge, not the female patient, had the final say in what would happen to her body. From Betsy being experimented on without autonomy, to Charisse fighting to keep hers. It's clear that the monster of medical bias isn't a menace of the past. It's alive and well today. We've seen the monster rampage through history and stomp through modern medicine. But here's the plot twist. People are finally writing a new chapter. First up, Femtech. UNICEF of April 17th, 2025 describes it as a movement, a network of tech companies led by female doctors, coders, and engineers who are focused on fixing the problems of women's healthcare. And it's working. Cervical cancer kills 1 woman every 2 minutes, but Femtech startup Mobile ODT is doing something about it. They created an AI technology that uses your smartphone as a screening device. Imagine catching cancer with the same device you used to doom scroll cat videos. Though it's encouraging to see tech companies take an interest in women's health, what's even more encouraging is a July 9th, 2024 report from the National Association of Medical Colleges, which found that since 2000, women have gone from accounting for 43% of med school graduates to 53%. That's right. The majority of the new generation of doctors for the first time ever are women. Somewhere an 18th century physician just burst into flames. But before we break out the champagne, there's still some monster DNA left in the system. The BBC reported on August 15th, 2025, that as women across industries are being pushed towards more traditional roles, female doctors are feeling it more than most. The NIH reported that in the past year alone, 1 in 3 female physicians have either gone part-time or left the profession entirely, compared to just 4% of men. And as a woman who wants to follow in my own mother's footsteps into the medical field and become a doctor, these numbers are discouraging. But instead of fearing the monster, I demand to be a part of a generation that changes it. Once and for all. Mary Wollstonecraft was demanding better for women back in 1792, and her daughter's Frankenstein didn't just warn about monsters. It warned us about the people who create them. Today, we've seen how the medical system has been stitched together from bad science and exclusion, how some old wounds still show up in exam rooms today, and the research and representation that are beginning to rebuild the body of medicine. Hopefully, this horror story can have a happier ending.
For our third informative speaker, code 4061, with their speech, The Great American Bento Box.
American lyrical genius, Schoolhouse Rock once proclaimed, "The great American melting pot. Ooh, what a stew, red, white, and blue." Inspired by America's diversity, I turn towards my elementary school's yearbook page. East Asians, South Asians, Southeast Asians. Okay, I think my school forgot half the ingredients in this melting pot. I mean, it took me 8 years to make one white friend. And he was Asian. Yeah, it's safe to say that the only melting pot I ever had at school was whatever they were serving in the cafeteria. But thankfully, my mom packed me a bento box every day for lunch instead. See, like almost every Asian you'll ever meet, I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. But more specifically, I grew up in San Jose's Japantown. Less than 100 years ago, there were over 80 across the US. But today, my hometown is just one of 3 remaining, which led me to wonder, where are my yellow fellows at? As Ben Lucker puts it in his book, A Nation of Neighborhoods, from Chinatown to Little Italy, ethnic neighborhoods are the touchstones that reimagine American culture. But lately, it seems that these touchstones are crumbling faster than we think. So today, let's first explore America's historical attitudes towards ethnic neighborhoods, then see how they reinvented themselves before finally understand how that visibility now threatens their existence. Because as the Harvard Political Review contends, ethnic neighborhoods might just be the ingredient that brings flavor to the increasingly homogeneous dish we call America. Now, for a country obsessed with food analogies, America sure has a low spice tolerance. Literally, in the late 19th century, states across the country passed alien land laws, which restricted immigrant land ownership, cramming them into the most crowded districts within cities. This gave rise to the first type of ethnic neighborhoods, the ethnic enclave. The largest was San Francisco's Chinatown. In 1906, the San Francisco earthquake destroyed much of the city, and Chinatown was completely burnt down. But despite all this destruction, many city residents didn't view this as a tragedy. As the Washington Star reported, the only gratifying feature of the earthquake was that Chinatown had been destroyed. That pestilence is of no more. With no other place to call home, Chinese citizens were forced to adapt by appealing to the very people that excluded them. It's why they hired white architects to rebuild Chinatown with the stereotypically Oriental architecture we see today. Religious structures, like pagodas, were placed on top of business centers. And so Chinatown became a tourist attraction, not by choice, but by necessity. As U.S. Wisconsin professor Hong Yang-in explains, ethnic enclaves faced a lose-lose scenario. Exclusion and lose your land, or assimilate and lose your culture. For over a century, our very government sought to erase ethnic neighborhoods through gentrification and redlining. But for some, they persisted by building solidarity. Take my Japantown. Decades before Asian Americans were even recognized as a force in the civil rights movement, members from my community marched alongside Black and Latino protesters in the 1963 March on Washington. Neighborhoods like J-Town rejected exclusion and assimilation, giving rise to a new type of ethnic neighborhoods, what Professor Wei Li calls ethnoburbs. Short for ethnic suburbs, they're defined by immigrants who transform traditionally white spaces into their own, allowing for cultural coexistence. And today, ethnoburbs are everywhere. So let's take a tour. 2,000 miles away from my hometown lies Little Mogadishu in Minneapolis. Originally built by Hmong and Somali refugees in the 90s, local businesses, like Carmel Mall, acclimated immigrants by providing employment and security. And as this ethnoburb transformed into an economic powerhouse, Concordia University notes that Somali Americans now net over $8 billion to the state's economy alone and participate more in the labor force than 70% of the state's population. But the strength of ethnoburbs isn't just economic. Flying down south to Linwood, California gives us Plaza Mexico, an ethnic mall fit with authentic architecture, including tiled roofs and Mesoamerican monuments. Architect David Hidalgo told the New York Times that for immigrant families who couldn't afford to travel back home, Plaza Mexico brought home to them. And this cultural hub doesn't just benefit immigrants. As urban studies professor Willalung Imam explains, America can't get enough of this experience, which is why today, 1 in 3 shoppers at ethnic malls are white and spend twice as much time at ethnic malls compared to traditional ones, according to the Anchor. Ethnic neighborhoods invert the minority-majority dynamic in America. And as UCLA sociologist Min Zhou contends, the cross-cultural empathy that forms through ethnic neighborhoods is what actually defines the American experience. See, we're always told to assimilate into the great American melting pot. But maybe the better analogy is the bento box. Individual dishes combine to form a fuller meal. But lately, it seems that the very successes of this bento box has now made it a target for erasure, because our attitudes towards ethnic neighborhoods never really did change since Chinatown. Look no further than the resurgence of land bans. In 2023, Florida passed Senate Bill 264, banning immigrants from countries like China and Syria from buying property near military bases for national security reasons. Sounds fine, until you realize that 75% of land becomes off limits, including larger immigrant cities like Miami, according to the Asian American Justice Center. And across the country, states are following suit. Since then, 12 states are considering similar legislation, and 30 have already passed them into law. As the Committee of 100 contends, this onslaught of legislation targets the immigrants who own less than 0.04% of American soil combined, yet codifying the erasure of ethnic neighborhoods into our very legal system. Simply put, under Florida law, I won't have a roof to live under just because my dad isn't a US citizen. And now, in 2026, it's not just an attack on land. It's an attack on people. Historically, ethnic neighborhoods have been a sanctuary for new immigrants. Well, tell that to Chao Fengge, whose murder was framed as a suicide after he was arrested by ICE in Flushing, Queens, a place meant to be his refuge. Or Rafael Veraza, who, along with his 1-year-old daughter, was pepper sprayed by ICE agents in Little Village, Chicago, simply for shopping at his local ethnic mall. And now, NBC reported that ICE had reopened Japanese internment camps, holding nearly 5,000 more detainees. This is no coincidence. the same rhetoric that ripped apart my Japantown a century ago is what justifies the eradication of thousands today. So I just want to ask, how much more is enough? Because if we keep on destroying the ethnic neighborhoods that make up our country, we won't have an America left. Now, I'll be honest, ethnic neighborhoods are far from perfect. They're messy, awkward, and sometimes a contradiction. But so is America. And growing up not just in the ethnic enclave of Japantown, but the ethnoburb of the Bay Area, ethnic neighborhoods have been the story of my life for the past 18 years. This is a picture of my mom and second grade me. And if you're wondering why I'm dressed up as Chinese homework, it's because after years of fighting through my ethnic neighborhood, she founded the second oldest public Mandarin immersion program in the country, the Cupertino Language Immersion Program. And while I did watch Schoolhouse Rock in English, I actually took US history in Mandarin. See, I learned that in Chinese, America is 美国, but the literal translation is beautiful country. And I generally mean that. So as we celebrate America's 250th anniversary this year, maybe ethnic neighborhoods are what make America beautiful in the first place. It's beautiful when I can buy authentic mochi just 2 blocks down the corner. It's beautiful when I can teach my white friends how to use chopsticks without stabbing the food. And it's beautiful when we're no longer a melting pot, but the great American bento box.
And now, for our fourth speaker, code 4109, with their speech, Drink Me, Shrink Me.
You might not know it, but this year marks the 160th anniversary of Alice in Wonderland, the iconic story turned novel, turned movie, turned Jefferson Airplane acid trip, turned Tim Burton nightmare fuel. Over time, Alice's absurd adventure has started to feel less like fantasy and more like foreshadowing. I mean, think about it. We learned about vaping from a caterpillar, gaslighting from the Cheshire Cat, and let's be honest, when Alice drinks a mystery potion labeled Drink Me, shrinks to fit society's demands, and spends the rest of the story trying to make sense of her own body, she might have been ahead of her time. Because today, thanks to GLP-1s, that magic shrinking potion isn't just a metaphor, it's medicine. Drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, and Mounjaro, known as GLP-1 receptor agonists, are literally reshaping the world around us, with users reporting a 15 to 25% reduction of their body weight. This single class of pharmaceuticals has resulted in what Gallup's 2025 National Health and Well-Being Index calls the first decline of US obesity in decades, which is why GLP-1s may be a winning hand for healthcare and the economy, or it might just be another card in the deck, constantly stacked against plus-size people. So today, let's start by diving down the rabbit hole of GLP-1 science. We'll inject some applications before finally resizing our understanding with their implications. Because with the use of these medications, we have the ability to end obesity within a single generation. But that raises a deeper question. Should we? Yes, GLP-1 sounds like Elon Musk's 15th born child. but it actually stands for glucagon-like peptide 1, a naturally occurring hormone that helps regulate glucose and appetite. They were originally developed to treat type 2 diabetes, but during research in the early 2000s, scientists discovered something unexpected. According to the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, when taken by injection once weekly, patients were losing significant weight and showing a dramatic reduction in the key glucose markers linked to diseases of the heart, pancreas, kidneys, and brain. All of them. See, we all produce this hormone naturally, but the breakthrough is that increasing the body's dose upgrades your system in 3 key ways. First, they target hunger signals in the brain and dial them way down, making your brain say you're not hungry. Second, they slow digestion so you stay full longer. And third, they improve insulin sensitivity and lower blood sugar to boost your metabolism. It doesn't change your willpower, it changes your wiring. But for some, it's the first time they feel like their biology is working with them instead of against them. The same drug reducing risk for some of the most debilitating and costly chronic conditions like kidney failure and Alzheimer's was also helping patients lose weight. And while the first half of the sentence should have been the headline, the world was far more consumed by the waistline. So, GLP-1s improve mood and help people feel calmer and more regulated. Wait, I think that's just weed. But just like weed in California, these drugs are everywhere. GLP-1s have been featured on the front pages everywhere from People magazine to The Economist, a rare moment of bipartisan enthusiasm in such a divided media landscape. Today, 1 in 12 Americans are actively taking these medications, which might sound like a lot until you realize 4 in 10 adults and 1 in 5 children medically qualify. By conservative estimates, GLP-1s have already driven over £500 million of weight loss in just the United States. To put that in perspective, the average Asian elephant weighs 10,000 pounds, meaning that we've lost more than the combined weight of every Asian elephant alive today. That's a lot of junk in the trunk. But for users, the number isn't the elephant in the room. The feeling is. Let's take a look at how GLP-1s are actually being used and stories the real world is telling us today. This is Dustin. Dustin was overweight and was exhausted all the time. When his children were born, he knew he needed to lose the weight to become a more active part of their lives. Since every other weight loss program had failed time after time, he decided to try GLP-1s. Through their help, he lost 60 pounds and regained his life. He says that being on GLP-1s has turned my life around. And this medication has given me a life with my family. In addition to personal impact, these drugs are decreasing the amount spent on other medical treatments. According to the National Institute of Health, reduced health problems associated with obesity, like heart attack, stroke, and sleep apnea, will save trillions in healthcare costs. Harvard researchers estimate that for every $1 spent on obesity medication, $3.50 is saved in long-term medical costs. Given the scope and impact of these medications, the pharmaceutical industry is experiencing a boom not seen since the introduction of Prozac or Viagra. I wanted to make a joke here, but it was too hard. And with Trump RX's rapid policy shift, the market pushed to lower cost, and the 2026 introduction of the much cheaper GLP-1 pill, we can be certain that, unlike the weight, GLP-1s aren't going away. At this point, it's no longer about whether GLP-1s will stay, but how widely they'll reach. But what if GLP-1s were just like painting the roses red? Because while the result may seem beautiful, they exemplify how our healthcare system works as the thorns beneath remain untouched. The National Library of Medicine points out that today, the United States doesn't regulate ultra-processed food systems, subsidize fresh food access equitably, legislate against predatory marketing, address food deserts, and the list goes on. Our system essentially manufactures disease, and the response is simply to sell the chemical correction as the solution. And while Trump RX is in a rush to make them cheaper through rapid policy shifts, the systemic reasons for high obesity remain untouched. Food is getting more expensive while drugs are getting cheaper. All we're doing is shuffling the deck. And until we fix the system that makes people sick, no drug will ever make us well. But the deeper implication lies in how GLP-1s may reshape our cultural understanding of obesity as a marker of class or wealth, rather than a complex condition shaped by environment, society, and genetics. And I too have felt this pressure. Living in a world that's told me I was fat since I was 6 years old, I grew up measuring myself against numbers on a scale instead of my own potential. Every classroom seat, every family photo, every glance in the mirror has reminded me that before I was seen as kind, smart, or capable, I was seen as just fat. The weight I carried was never just on my body. It was on my worth. If you lose weight, you're praised. If you stay fat, you're judged. But if you use medication, you're criticized for taking the easy way out. In this new world with GLP-1s, you can't win. And this tension reveals a deeper divide. Some people see obesity as a disease in need of treatment. Others see body diversity as something worth protecting and worry that framing larger bodies as a condition to be cured reinforces decades of stigma and exclusion. But being informed means recognizing that both of these perspectives exist. Because GLP-1s aren't just changing bodies. They're exposing a cultural disagreement about what health, acceptance, and progress should look like. And in the past few decades, we've seen a rise of a movement to embrace body diversity and fat acceptance. And today, this is the body positivity movement. Wait a moment. No, this is the body positivity movement. And while this has been incredibly powerful and positive, the shift to GLP-1s threatens to open a door to a future where we treat body diversity the exact same way that Wonderland treats curiosity, as something to outgrow. Alice's Wonderland story ends with a question. Was it real or just a dream? When it comes to GLP-1s, the answer is both. Because these medications are a magic potion for Medi. But what matters most isn't what it does. It's what comes after. GLP-1s won't vanish anytime soon, and neither will the questions they raise. About access, about equity, and about what it means to be well in a society that still confuses weight with value. Because if we're not careful, we won't just shrink bodies. We'll shrink the spaces we make for difference, for complexity, and even for wonder, land.
For our fifth informative speaker, code 4254, with their speech, A Touchy Subject.
In a classic Greek myth, King Midas was granted the gift of turning everything he touched into gold. Everything seemed wonderful until he tried to drink, eat, and hug his daughter. With a single touch, everything changed. Honestly, this kind of reminds me of someone else I know. I mean, have you seen the White House lately? That guy can't stop touching. But today, the touch we're talking about is consensual, not presidential. Ultimately, Midas realized the real gold was found in the simple act of touch itself. According to Dr. Tiffany Field, director of the University of Miami's Touch Research Institute, touch is vital for human interactions, and yet so little is known about it. In fact, Dr. Uzge Ogurlu of UC Berkeley notes, touch may be the most overlooked sense of all. She explains, we may not notice it when it is present, but when it is absent, the effects ripple quietly and powerfully through our lives. In a survey of Americans, Dr. Tiffany Field of the University of Miami explains, touch is crucial. Dr. Corey Floyd of the University of Arizona found that on average, 75% of adults are in a state of touch deprivation. So today, let's discover what King Midas misunderstood, the power and necessity of touch, by examining how it is physically, socially, and technologically transformational. Because, as American professor of neuroscience at Johns Hopkins University, David J. Linden emphasizes, touch is not optional for human development, it's crucial in creating our unique human experience. King Midas got rich quick, but touch deprived faster. Unlike gold, touch is something we can't live without. It is physically essential in sustaining our body and brain. As early as 8 weeks in the womb, touch receptors form to process tactile information, whereas the other senses are designated to a single organ, the eyes, ears, mouth, or nose. Touch is experienced through the 4 to 5 million touch receptors, which provide a continuous stream of information throughout the entire body. For these reasons, touch is considered the mother of all senses. When the skin detects contact, signals travel to the brain along 2 pathways, one leading to the somatosensory cortex, which identifies pressure or texture, and the other to the emotional cortex, where the touch is associated with feelings. This dual processing system explains why a gentle touch can convey comfort, or a pinch can communicate discomfort. The simple act of touch, like holding a hand, creates a physiological ripple effect. It increases oxytocin, the love hormone, releases serotonin, the body's natural antidepressant, and decreases cortisol, the stress hormone, ultimately promoting relaxation. Dr. Tiffany Field of the University of Miami explains, fundamentally, touch is critical for growth, development, and maintaining health for all ages, reducing infant mortality by 25% in the first month, and, as Stanford Medicine notes, increasing longevity by 50% in later years. Yet, Dr. Field warns, American society is dangerously touch deprived. Nearly 1 in 4 18 to 29-year-olds experience loneliness due to touch deprivation. And according to a 2004 report by Harvard Medicine, and according to a 2024, imagine King Midas on a dating app. Great bio, disastrous first date. Talk about a red flag, even for a gold digger. Midas believed gold would elevate his status. In reality, it is touch itself that carries real social power. In terms of communication, psychologist Matthew Herdenstein conducted social experiments in which volunteers attempted to communicate emotions to blindfolded strangers using a 5-second touch. He found that 78% of participants could accurately recognize distinct emotions, ranging from anger, fear, and disgust to love, gratitude, and happiness. These findings revealed that socially, touch is a universal language. Touch also provides social connection. In the 2023 book, Touch Matters, author Michael Bannister explains that our sense of touch is key to forming stronger group cohesion. This was shown in NBA teams who were in constant contact with each other. Whether a pat on the back, chest bump, or a high five, more touch correlated with more wins. So, where my hug at? Okay, later. Each touch only lasted just 1 second or less, but researchers concluded that positive social touch, even when minimal, increased team connectedness and overall success. Brief social touch can also transform health behaviors for older adults. A study conducted by the Department of Health and Nutrition Sciences at Brooklyn College found that when caregivers used a gentle touch of just 5 seconds or less while verbally encouraging sick or elderly patients to eat more, their nutritional intake increased by an average of 200 calories. More impressively, the positive effect of this brief touch lasted up to 5 days after the initial contact. Ultimately, touch was used to promote long-lasting, positive health behaviors. That is the power of touch. We might have more in common with King Midas's world than we think. Just as King Midas became trapped inside a world transformed by his touch, today, health and science journalist Sushma Subramanian notes, we are trapped inside our screens. Since we have become so connected to our technology, engineers are using it to fulfill our need for touch. This technology, called haptics, from the Greek word haptikos, which means to grasp, mimics touch through motions, vibration, or pressure. Its purpose? Protection and connection. In terms of protection, today, haptic technology is in our cars through ADAS, or Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. Tactile signals are felt throughout the vehicle to alert drivers of blind spots or potential collisions. Forbes August 2023 estimates haptics will prevent 37 million car crashes over the next 30 years. In terms of connection, haptic technology is transforming sports experiences and expanding inclusivity. A device called OneCourt turns real-time game action into vibrations, allowing fans with low vision or blindness to feel the ball's movement on the field. After being successfully piloted in 2025 by the Minnesota Vikings, it was then introduced to fans at the Super Bowl this year. Additionally, touch technology is giving fans who are deaf the ability to feel the energy of cheering crowds in football stadiums. The Newcastle football team partnered with Celasport to create haptic technology in these jerseys. They pulse as the decibels in the stadium increase, allowing wearers to be immersed in the experience. Finally, the $90 Bond Touch bracelet uses haptics to connect people across any distance. A tap on one bracelet sends a vibration to the other, creating the sensation of touch. It helps military families, couples, and those with separation anxiety connect through touch. And for hopeful parents struggling with infertility, each tap from a surrogate mother when their baby kicks is a cherished connection from the mother of all senses. Marcia O'Malley of Rice University states, this technology will bridge the gap between digital interaction and human touch. Today, we have explored the power of touch by examining how it is physically, socially, and technologically transformational. As science journalist Sushma Subramanian notes, philosophers, writers, and artists consider touch a powerful sense because it tells the truth when our eyes deceive us. But unlike King Midas, we don't have to lose touch to realize its worth. We only have to understand that touch itself is gold.
For our sixth informative speaker, code 4255, with their speech, Speaking of Algorithms.
My little brother Zaid has the worst potty mouth, with 4 older siblings who constantly mess with him. He learned to fight back fast, and his weapon of choice was the F-bomb, a serious red flag for an incoming kindergartner. So my family taught him to code switch for the classroom. His F-bombs turned to fudgesicles. His SH words, sugar honey iced tea, and HELL became HE double hockey sticks. And while his self-censorship was limited to school, very limited to school, collectively, we also self-censor online. This type of code switching is what etymologist Adam Alexic has termed algo speak, or algorithmic speak. Algo speak is defined as coded language used online, specifically on social media platforms, in order to avoid getting in trouble with restrictive social media algorithms. Our language is always changing. But now, National Public Radio July 2025 reports, social media algorithms are driving that change faster than ever before. As Scientific American 2025 describes, it represents a Gutenberg-sized shift in our culture. A TELUS International survey found 72% of Americans have encountered algo speak of some kind online, and 30% have used algo speak to bypass censorship. Given this prevalence, algo speak impacts us, whether we realize it or not. So let's learn how algo speak is pushing language to evolve and impacting our world. To do this, we will look at, first, how algo speak is promoted. Second, how it's shaping online communication. Before finally, how it's showing up in our in-person experiences. I'll admit, I may have taught Zaid a colorful word or two. The same way, algo speak is learned and promoted by users and algorithms. Here's how. Social media platforms promote algo speak by removing or limiting the reach of content that violates their community guidelines. And as a 2024 article from the Reynolds Journalism Institution explains, content removal doesn't just target the matters discussed in posts, but the language used in them as well. For example, when words like kill, gun, or pedophile are used, posts are red flagged by the algorithm for removal or limitation. So users adapt. Kill becomes unalive. Gun becomes pew pew. And pedophile becomes PDF file, all to get an algorithmic green flag. As words like these catch on, so does the algorithm. In his 2025 book, Algo Speak, Adam Alexic explains that when a new word pops up, the algorithm eventually realizes its controversial use, so the word is censored, and users are motivated to find another replacement. Substitutes can be as simple as altering a few letters, using an audibly similar word, or using an emoji. From the frog emoji representing the F word, to fruits and vegetables representing our body parts. The examples are endless. Now, the summer before my brother started first grade, the cycle started right back up again. But this time, we made a new rule. He could only say words he could spell. His response? Well, it started with an F and ended with a CK. He did not spell fire truck. Even though our rule was very unsuccessful in shaping Zaid's language for the better, algorithms are successfully shaping our communication online. One way algorithms are shaping online interactions is through the creation of in-groups and out-groups. Members of the in-group know what an AlgoSpeak term really means, while people in the out-group don't. A 2023 Forbes article gives the example of one TikTok user who shared their experience with sexual assault online using the code word mascara. In a response, actress Julia Fox posted, "I don't feel bad for you." Her comment received tons of backlash, with members of the in-group accusing her of diminishing sexual assault. She quickly apologized, stating that she genuinely didn't know they were not talking about makeup. In this case, Julia Fox was a part of the outgroup and faced confusion, one of the many consequences of misunderstanding coded language. Another way algorithms are shaping online interactions is through substitution. One example, the substitution of the word or symbol grape for rape. According to News Australia 2025, this is because using grape can avoid red flags to expose experiences to more online users. However, Kate Scott, a PhD candidate at the University of Sydney, warns, substituting this kind of language sanitizes the significance of what's being spoken about. She goes on to say that at the end of the day, grape is not rape. Sexual assault should be discussed in terms with the gravity of the language behind it. Now, the summer before my brother started second grade, my family decided that his dirty mouth had something to do with his internet access. The same way that language used online shaped my brother's speech in real life, the AlgoSpeak terms and symbols we use are showing up in our in-person experiences. In a time where expressing controversial opinions and political views is leading to job loss and threats of violence, it's no surprise AlgoSpeak is migrating from online spaces to in-person exchanges. First, AlgoSpeak is being used in an attempt to protect people from the gravity of suicide in real-life conversation. In 2024, the Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle created an exhibit in tribute to Kurt Cobain. On a placard about his death, they wrote, "Kurt Cobain unalived himself at 27. CNN reporter Scotty Andrews explained the word's usage was shocking to museum goers, who found the term disrespectful despite good intentions. This word choice reflects the process of AlgoSpeak, except here, AlgoSpeak wasn't being used to appeal to the algorithm, but to visitors of the museum. Clearly, the use of AlgoSpeak terms in real life is actively shaping our language. AlgoSpeak is also being used to protest policies relating to Palestine. In the past 3 years, the watermelon emoji has appeared online as a way for creators to express their support to Palestinians without getting flagged. And this advocacy through symbolism moved offline last fall when Al Jazeera September 2025 reported Dutch Member of Parliament Esther Ouwehand showed up to Parliament wearing this blouse representing the Palestinian flag and was dismissed and told to change. So she returned wearing a watermelon blouse in place of it. This time, a flag for the in-group, who recognized her support of Palestine through AlgoSpeak. Lastly, AlgoSpeak is being used to organize real-world events. The Los Angeles Public Press reported In August 2025, after TikTok users noticed that their posts about ICE raid protests were being censored, they adopted the AlgoSpeak code phrase, LA Music Festival, to bypass moderation. This coded language allowed users to organize protests and encourage community action. Thousands of people understood and took to the streets to protest. Using AlgoSpeak in this way has the potential to influence public opinion, impact news coverage, and create political pressure in real time. So, in light of the Department of Homeland Security's February 2026 request that social media platforms supply information about users who post anti-ICE content, the question remains, is AlgoSpeak becoming necessary to political expression? Currently, the answer is unclear. But what is clear is that AlgoSpeak is impacting our political discourse both on and offline. So today, we learned how AlgoSpeak is promoted, how it's shaping online communication, and how it's showing up in our in-person experiences. Just like Zaid, people will continue to find creative ways to connect, express, and adapt, even under the algorithm's watchful eye.
Winners in informative speaking. In 6th place, Mahab Ali from Apple Valley High School in Minnesota, coached by Yaitzel Voss, Pam Wyckoff, and Georgia Schmidt. In 5th place, Anissa Somerville from Apple Valley High School in Minnesota, coached by Yaitzel Voss and Georgia Schmidt. In 4th place, Claire Rooney from Lincoln East High School in Nebraska, coached by Nick Heinrich and Elle Bartz. In 3rd place, receiving a $250 scholarship, is Lindsay Brassner from American Heritage School, Broward in Florida, coached by Natalie Sintek and Joelle Dennis. In 2nd place, receiving a $500 scholarship, is Jeffrey Bow from Bellarmine College Prep in California, coached by Gavin Griffin.
And your national champion in informative speaking, receiving a $1,000 scholarship, is Kobe Jones from Lindale High School in Texas. Coached by J.P. Fugler and Rory McKenzie.
David, you might have noticed that I was handing out some white envelopes
I
on
saw that.
stage.
What was in there?
Pam and Joe Wyckoff sponsor an additional $500 per finalist just for making the stage.
Wow.
Of informative speaking.
Wow. Congratulations. Thank you to the Wyckoffs, Pam and Joe. Please welcome to the